Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 11th, 2020 Board of Selectmen's meeting. Let's see, could I have a roll call, please? I just want to let everybody know that we opened the session at 6:30, and we went into executive session. We came back out of executive session, now we're going back into regular session. Could I have a roll call, please?
All 5 selectmen are present, as well as town council and town administrator.
Pledge of Allegiance. How about Mr. Ethier? You want to lead us on the Pledge of Allegiance, young man?
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'm going to skip around these announcements and stuff for the time being because we have a lot of people and we're coming in late, okay? We'll get back to it, all right? The first thing we're going to take up is we have the task force here, the enforcement task force, and they've been working diligently on some things, and I want to get them in here and out of here, so if they could come down and grab some chairs in front of us, it would be awesome.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Now, there's another chair over there, or bring another chair up. And you know how this works, guys, you gotta talk into the mics, unfortunately, pretty close, otherwise, nobody will hear you at home. Welcome, Flannery. Look at that, and Rich left.
Wow.
Another task force member.
So he works for you guys now and not us.
Mr. Kelly,
How are you?
the Ethier, how's everybody?
Excellent, thank you.
Very nice to see you all. How you be?
What we're about to come. Town Administrator, Mr. Bowen, members of the Selectmen.
You gotta talk right into that mic, buddy.
Mr. Chairman.
There you go.
Thank you for asking us to come here tonight. We're doing some pretty important work, and we have accomplished a lot, as I said. We hope to keep doing what we're doing. Tonight, we're here because Mr. Bowen had suggested that we come before the board to ask for further compliance in Superior Court. We have some cases that are pretty difficult cases that we're not getting any compliance on. And I think at this point, we need a little assistance from the court systems. So Rich had asked me to come before you, and if you want, Rich, I will go over the cases that we have.
Bob, would you mind introducing everybody on the...
I was just going to do that. Thank you. So the Code Enforcement Task Force was set up by the Board of Selectmen and Town Administrator. I was appointed chairman. Derek Sullivan is on the task force, as well as Rich Bowen, Lieutenant Flannery, Chris Smith from Wareham Fire, John Kelly from Wareham Fire, Richard Sniger from Onset Fire, and Dave Morris from the Building Department. So the reason why we're here tonight is to get additional compliance through the court system, and Rich Bowen has suggested to the task force and to myself that the only way we're going to get these 3 properties, at this point, these 3 properties, is by taking them to Superior Court. That's 16 Wareham Avenue, and that's owned by Donald McMullen. It's a real problem. It's a problem for the neighbors. It's a problem in the neighborhood, and there's a lot of compliance issues there. 2838 Cranberry Highway is a Richard White. He moved into town, and he's operating a business in a residential neighborhood. And none of our efforts, including the building commissioner, who's doing a great job, he's new to the town and new to the position, but we're all working closely together, and we hope that we can get something done with Mr. Richard White. 198 Main Street. You probably know this building. It's Carl Cornwell's building. and it is in bad state of disrepair. It's fallen down in rainstorms, it's fallen down in windstorms, it's damaging people's cars, and he will not answer any of our calls, he won't answer any of the task force letters, nor letters from the building commissioner. So those 3 properties here is why we're here to ask the Board of Selectmen to give us permission to take it further.
Okay. Motion made by Alan, seconded by Mary. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous. Rich, you go to town.
Well, no, go to court.
Yeah, with your permission, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, what we'll do on these 3 cases is we'll file verified complaints in Superior Court with appropriate affidavits and evidence. We'll seek not just a temporary restraining order, but also a preliminary injunction, and hopefully a permanent injunction requiring that these particular property owners come into compliance with respect to their properties. You know, normally we would just undertake this type of authorization in an executive session setting. However, and if I may speak for the task force, Mr. Chairman, the task force has been getting a lot of complaints about these properties. It's certainly our hope that that these individuals will come into compliance without us having to go to court, but here we are, as a last resort, off to court we go if things don't change soon.
Well, this
Thank
is really nice because, you know, as everybody knows who's been around here for any length of time, everybody seems to think that we don't enforce anything. And so this has been a long time coming, and I greatly appreciate all you guys getting together and getting this done and really starting to work on some of these code issues that we got going out there. I mean, I think what happens is they, you know, you have one inspector come in and he's overwhelmed because he's got to go out and do whatever, and then, you know, he moves on or somebody else comes in and they start with the same things all over again, and it just keeps becoming repetitive. And it hasn't been good for the town because these things make us look badly. And, you know, enforcement is unfortunate sometimes that you have to do it, but when it's necessary, it's an important part of what you do in town. And what you guys are doing is terrific. I mean, absolutely great. The idea of this task force was brilliant, and I'm glad that it's happening. Anybody want have anything else to say right now? Go ahead, Alan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If
You all set, Jim?
No, just, yeah, thanks, and I know it's not easy. And it's too bad that you had to get to this point where you have to take people to court to get them to clean up not just some small issues, but some major problems.
Peter?
Yeah, you know, what isn't on here, and I suppose it makes sense because they're closed cases, but there are cases that have been closed. There are people that, once they've been visited by the health agent or the building inspector or whomever, have come into compliance. I know some of them had to be dragged kicking and screaming into compliance, but nonetheless, there's you know, what you see here is the worst of the worst is what's going to Superior Court. The active cases that are listed here could potentially wind up there someday too. I know a couple of these properties, and they're not exactly beauties, but you know, they're taking the worst of the worst, going after those, and then there'll be, I'm sure once you've got those cases managed or closed out, then you'll start going after some of the ones that haven't quite risen to that level yet. So this is an ongoing thing. This isn't just one and done. It's not going to be one and done going to court either. So I would encourage the task force to come back here anytime they need an authorization to go to court.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is, do you guys want to, you know, I really want to make this loud you guys a little bit because I know that you have been working diligently because I do keep in touch. And
Yeah, this is why this was handed out.
Yeah.
It got-
so this is what's going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking about like
You got binders.
some major enforcement here. And it's just so good to finally see it happening and everything. And not that and I don't want to make everybody think that the inspectors weren't doing their job, but they are. They just weren't getting cooperation. And I think because Because, you know, they'll come up and say, well, the fire department didn't say this, or they didn't say this, and this, and that. Now, you're all there. You know, they can't use the he said, she said stuff anymore. You know what I mean? Because you're all right there to make it happen. So it's just terrific, and it's got to keep going, and I just want to applaud you all for, you know, doing what you need to do. Is there anything else you want to talk about what you've been doing or anything, and not necessarily specific cases, but?
I would like the members of the task force, if they have something to say. Mr. Kelly, you want to say a few
Yeah,
things?
I think that this has been a great thing for the town as a whole. Being a separate entity, sometimes my department would get called, we'd be the third person back to that property. Made it very difficult for us because I don't know what was transpired prior to our arrival. Sometimes we would experience a lot of agitated people because now we're the third agency coming in. When the task force started, it was, we put a lot of things out on the table. It's been a great everything about it's been really well for us. We've been kind of, you know, spending more time collectively going through, and there's some cases in here that you'll see that, like Peter, you said, that were already closed, and there's some that we've brought educated people, and we didn't have to get to that point. So it's not a quick process, and we've learned that we have to be very diligent in what we do. But I just want to thank everybody that I've been working with, all the agencies. It's been a fantastic job so far.
Well, so let's make everybody out there realize that we're coming for them for enforcement, and that they need to start looking around and take care of their stuff.
Lieutenant?
Collectively, I think we can get a lot done and help the town out, and I'm proud I'm on this with you guys. And we communicate probably a few times a week, sometimes daily. Bob and I talk, and it's very helpful, I think, with everybody passing information back and forth, and then our meetings, and we're able to get to a location, all of us out there, and I think this is really going to be helpful down the road, too.
That's awesome.
Dave?
Yeah, I appreciate the praise and the well-wishing, you know, and I look at these three properties, they have problems, and they need to be dealt with the way that we're doing it, and it's good for the town as well.
Well, that one on, certainly that one on Main Street there, that's gonna fall down the street pretty soon if we don't get that taken care of.
Yeah.
I mean, they got things around the back of it, but I don't know, man, that looks pretty dangerous to me. You know, so the quicker we can deal with that, the better.
Yeah, you always hit the accelerator when you go past that.
Yeah, everybody gets a little nervous going around that building now, you know? It's like, woo.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say, I thank these fine gentlemen for their time. They're obviously busy in the normal course, and to put the time and effort that they are into this, I think speaks volumes about them and their organization. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Appreciate you coming in to get us
Yeah,
up to
you
date.
too, Rich.
You too, Rich.
I was going to ask you, Rich, if you had anything to say.
Rich just got to sue 3 people. He's happy now.
Working under the leadership of Chairman Ethier and working with these dedicated professionals is the highlight of every week.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Wow.
What does that say about you?
I know, jeez. That's it. Okay, we're out of here.
We're done, yeah.
Thank you.
What'd you say? Is there an appointment coming up soon? No, you can take it. You can take it. And those are, you need that stuff.
Keep them in your office.
Okay. All right, excellent.
Thank you. We're gonna do, yeah, no kidding, huh? All right, I'm gonna call up, do the hearing at 7:30 for the CBD grant, CDBG grant. Could you come down, sir?
Yes, sir.
CBGBs. We got the CBGBs.
They come once a year.
You do. Whether we need it or not.
Right.
I was looking at your list, and I'm a little depressed. Because, you know, there wasn't enough money in there for the library or the outreach worker for the aging. You know?
Yeah.
It'd be nice to get that grant back up to the 1.1 or whatever we used to get, almost 1.2, right?
Well, if you remember, it was reduced even further than this, and with Mr. Sanborn's guidance, we got that back up, and listening to him, we did the right stuff and finished up projects, so we weren't punished. Yeah, what was it, about 675, Peter?
All right, well, why don't you fill us in quick, and then we'll go from there. First, it's a hearing, right? We gotta open up. the
That's right,
hearing.
that's right.
Could I have a motion to open the hearing,
So
please?
moved.
So moved by Peter, seconded by Alan. Roll call, Alan.
Yes.
Jim.
Yes.
Mary. Peter.
Yes.
Patrick. It is now open.
Okay, thank you very much. I know you got a big agenda, so I will try to be brief. I have prepared handout materials for the general public. They do not include this memorandum, which was the second page, second document that was behind the public hearing notice, which was really for the board. But this is a public hearing, which is required under the public participation requirements of the grant. The grant's due on March 6th. It's an electronic submission. The town can apply for up to $825,000. And the application the contents of the application, the project activities, and the application that we are recommending is a refunding of the housing rehabilitation program, which provides financial assistance to lower and moderate income homeowners throughout the town. That is not funded under the current grant, and so we would like to refund it. The second item, though not in order, is to fund 5 of 7 Public Social Service Agency proposals that we received. Under the rules, the town can fund up to a maximum of $165,000, of which you've always funded the maximum since I've been working for the town.
Absolutely.
The third, and I'll return to that in just a moment. The third item is the long-desired investment in some needs in Onset as a result of the slums and blight inventory. When I met with you on the 28th, I gave you a preview of this. What we're proposing to do is basically reconstruct sidewalks in the park right there, the heart of Onset, both sidewalks along the perimeter and through the park. They're concrete paver blocks. They're really sinking or raising or falling out in places. Some of the pathways are really narrow, so the proposal actually is to remove those and to do a replacement with concrete sidewalks, maybe with some decorative accents here and there, but basically concrete sidewalks for the longevity. So we are still working on a cost estimate. We're working with Beta Engineering on that. The grant proposes to pick up the construction cost. Dave Menard has said he will pay for design with Chapter 90 funds. So that's very much a work in progress at this point. So the other item I'd like to go back to is the public social services. As I said, you got 7 proposals asking for almost $222,500. So it was $57,000 more in requests than the town is able to fund. Plus, under the rules, you can only fund a maximum of 5 programs. We got 7 requests. So it's a game of musical chairs to some extent. So we are recommending funding for the Boys and Girls Club at $40,000, which is less than they requested. To the Christopher Donovan Day School, for pre-K and kindergarten scholarships for low-income families. They requested 40,000. We're recommending 30,000. The Council on Aging requested 10,000 and change. We are not recommending that be funded. Damien's Pantry, the family pantry, requested 25,000. We're recommending funding at 22,500. GATRA requested 45,000, and we're recommending 37,000. Reading Partners, which is sponsored by the Library Foundation, requested 17. We are not recommending funding for them at this time. They have just got funding, so we would look to fund them and other agencies later in the grant year should monies become available, which is a possibility. Not necessarily a likelihood, but a possibility. And the last request we're recommending funding for is for Wareham Area Committee for the Homeless, also known as Turning Point and Baby Point. They requested 38. We're requesting funding them at 35,500. So all the requests, even the ones we're recommending, have some degree of reduction, and that's simply a matter of the arithmetic. So just one more thing for the board, that a question or a point came up when I met with you on the 28th, and that is the mini entitlement status, which puts you in a non-competitive, a favorably non-competitive position. The state has one more year after this grant application of mini entitlement designation. So you've got fiscal year 2021 coming up where you'll still be a mini entitlement. They have stated they will review that after 2021. They've reviewed it twice in the past, and you've maintained, and they've kept it. So after 2021, there's certainly, at this point, uncertainty. I'd be happy to ask any questions entertain any questions either from the board or from the general public.
Any question of the board?
No, I've already gone through all of it.
Jim?
And we spoke.
Mary?
We could go.
Is there anybody here, it's a public hearing, is there anyone here who would like to speak either for or against the grant application? Anybody here to speak, say anything about it?
I'd like to just, I'd just like to make the point that when we spoke last time, I think that the plan for the sidewalk improvements in Onset was a multi-year plan and an ongoing thing to address not just the park, but a number of the sidewalks throughout the village area. Am I correct on that?
That's correct, and not just sidewalks, possibly street conditions too. So it would be looking on a almost a street-by-street basis as what is the need for repair or reconstruction. So
You know that you're talking about using, not using the bricks that were there and using concrete.
right.
You know, they have concrete that they stamp to make it look like a brick,
Yep.
so it gives it a little class, you know?
Yep.
It's really relatively inexpensive to do,
Right.
so, okay. I mean, other than just a plain concrete sidewalk, you know? Go ahead, Alan.
How long is the basic, for the, the slum and blight? How long does the designation stay in
Yeah.
place?
How long has that been going on?
How long is what?
How long does it stay in place, the designation that we have?
When you get it, which you have not yet gotten it,
That's what I'm asking.
it's good for 10 years.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
And what's holding it up? Do you have any idea?
Backlog.
Yeah, okay.
Way behind.
All right, Peter?
Plus, it's a massive document for them to look at. They normally get them in, there may be 10 streets and 100 properties or something. That's sort of what the Wareham Village one was. This is almost 800 properties, 30 streets or
Right.
70 blocks or something like that. So it's a whole order of magnitude larger than they usually get.
Has Wareham's been accepted?
No.
No, so that's, how many years ago was that?
Well, that's still in force.
Well, Wareham Village,
Still active, right?
it is not active. That is also in for a renewal certification by DHCD. So that actually went in to DHCD for review before the onset one did, and neither one has yet been acted on. So I guess the bonus is the delay will extend this into the future.
Who does that? The Cannabis Control Commission?
Maybe.
Had to go there, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
So don't
Anything you wanna
quote
say?
that because they do have little updates or they follow what's in there.
I
and stuff,
know.
and they do give us funding.
They are amazing what they hear in terms of clipping service, and I
Yeah.
swear they have every selectmen's meeting room in the
They
state
have 'em bugged.
or something.
They got them bugged. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that, the materials we just received show that there are requests for over $220,000, but unfortunately, that's not the amount available. So, there are going to be some people who are disappointed. I'm sure that the cuts will be felt, but, in order to spread the money around as evenly as possible, this was the best sort of allocation you could have come up with. Thank you for that.
All right. Anybody, so I'm just going to ask one more time. Is there anybody who has anything to say? No? Can I have a motion to close the hearing, please?
So made.
Motion made by Alan, seconded by Peter. Roll call, Alan.
Yes.
Jim. Mary.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Patrick, yes. All right, the hearing's closed. So now we need to make a motion. And do I
Second
need to s-
page of the memo,
and
two
do we need-
motions.
Yeah, and do we need to sign certifying the public hearing?
No.
Okay. All right. You want to?
According to this, I'm chairman today.
Oh, you are. Well, that's okay.
2018, Peter.
You can be chairman today.
I think it is.
Second page of the memo you sent?
Memo. Here it is. Okay, I move that the selectmen approve the filing of a fiscal 2020 Massachusetts Community Development Block Grant Program grant application in an amount not to exceed $825,000. And the second part of the motion is to authorize the chairman of the Board of Selectmen and town administrator to take all actions required relating to the submission of said grant application.
Second.
Motion made by Peter, seconded by Alan. Let's do this as a roll call. Roll call, Alan.
Yes.
Jim. Peter.
Yes.
Mary.
Yes.
Patrick, yes. So it's unanimous, 5-0-0.
Good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for your work on this.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you next year. All right, let's go back to the thing. So we have another thing here we're gonna go to because I have town people waiting as well. Let's go to the Water Pollution Control Project presentation by GHD. This is the thing they want to put on the warrant, I believe, in order to do the D-night filters, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think so.
All right, so I think we usually turn off like half the lights, right, or something? So that show and tell can work. Bob, half the lights okay? How's that? Which side? That side? Okay. All right, go for it. Give us your presentation. First, you should tell us who you are. And when you talk, you must talk into the microphone. I mean it. Otherwise, they won't hear you at home at all.
Russ isn't a rookie.
Isn't?
Good evening. My name is Russ Kleekamp. I'm an engineer with GHD, and with me is Mark Drainville with GHD, and Mr. Guy Campina, the director of the Water Pollution Control Facility. So the presentation tonight is factual. It discusses some of the items we were asked to come back and evaluate. The package that was handed out is a little different, I believe, than the presentation in the Selectmen's package. There's been a few tweaks to the slides, so let me just get this set up here and away we go.
Really, we probably want to turn the light on the other side off.
Really?
Kill both lights.
Yeah, kill both lights. Please. Could you turn the other light off, somebody back there, please? There you go.
So what we're going to discuss tonight is just go over background of the project. I did want to speak about some of the current projects we're working on, a discussion of some of the findings, specifically the capacity, the odors, and then also the denitrification filters, and then some language for the town meeting.
1 minute, sir.
Yes.
Somebody's talking in the hallway. We need to close that door.
Okay.
All right.
And the presentation, it does have a lot of information. There's a lot of numbers, and I've tried to make it as understandable as possible, but if anybody has questions, please interrupt me as we're going along. This is one slide I like to show at the start of each presentation, again, just to remind everyone that this is the treatment facility. Generally, the raw wastewater enters the headworks, and it travels somewhat in a clockwise fashion through a series of tanks, clarifiers, through the denitrification filters, the ultraviolet disinfection, and then out through an outfall to the Agawam River. I wanted to bring this slide up again real quick, too, is that we've been very hard seeking grants for the work to date that we've been doing. And so far, since 2015, that these are all the projects. We don't need to go into each one of these, but the total amount of work that we've done with the grants is getting close to $2 million, and the grants have funded 1.35 of that. So, of course, we think this is great, and we're also going to continue and seek additional grants in the future. So at the last, I believe it was the October Selectmen's meeting, we were here discussing a town meeting article, potentially of $10 million. And after some discussion, we pulled that back to $2.5 million because it was for 3 specific items. It was for a third equalization basin, for denitrification filters, and then also for improvements to the odor control. We had a good handle on the cost for the third equalization basin. And I believe at that meeting we discussed, to take a closer look at the other 2. Would $150,000 satisfy that? At the meeting, we said yes. Once we looked at the numbers and crunched everything, the contract amount was for $128,000, but we expanded that to the entire treatment plant. The reason we did that was because in the future, if you're ever going to go for SRF funding, you have to have the engineering background. So regardless of what the system or processes or the portion of the plant needs to be upgraded, we're going to have that background information. As part of that assignment, we had to take a very close look at the flows and the characteristics of the plant, and I wanted to present some of that tonight. Okay. These are just a few of the images when we did the walkthrough from the plant evaluation. So at first glance, okay, it's just a bunch of pumps, and what are we looking at? But you can notice here in certain areas of the treatment plant, for example, there's a lot of moisture on the floor. And this is with the mechanical processes in the plant. There's a lot of fittings, valves, pieces of the pipes that are leaking that have to be replaced. So this is part of the plant evaluation to go piece by piece through the treatment facility and identify the improvements. I have a few pictures here. I'll just go through them fairly quickly. Again, there's a lot of moisture on the floor. You can see certain pieces of the mechanical backbone down there are leaking a little bit, so those have to be replaced. Again, and you can see certain pieces of the infrastructure is held together with literally duct tape and trash bags. So it's getting us by, but anything mechanical or any piece of infrastructure has a finite life. And we're getting close to the end of it for some of the pieces at the treatment facility. And here we have saran wrap holding together some of the fittings. So there are some priorities that have to be addressed. Now, I mentioned before that we took a very close look at the flows entering the treatment plant. And this is straight out of the permit. What the guidance tells us is that once we reach 80% of the permitted flow, which in the case of Wareham is 1.56 million gallons a day, that's what the EPA allows the facility to discharge to the Agawam River. Once you get to 80% of that, the town has to submit a plan saying what's going to take up the remainder of that portion and what are the steps moving forward. And the way specifically it's written is that for the average annual flow over a calendar year, which is January through December, that's where they take the average flow from. So the average flow for 2019, from January 2019 to December 2019, was 1.18 million gallons, which is 76%. So we're getting very close to that number. With a high likelihood, given the increased rates of I&I and things like that, that in calendar year 2020, we will probably see that 80% flow. So we want to start preparing for what the next steps are.
Is that actual flow, or does it count committed flow?
Excuse me?
Is that actual flow coming into the plant, or is that including flow that's committed to stuff? Like, you know, Bourne uses what, 110 out of 200,000? So
Correct.
is that included in that number?
That is actual flow coming into the plant, considering no commitments whatsoever.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. Wow.
So the thought of giving up more capacity to another community.
That's problematic.
This is just a graphical slide from 2019 showing month by month. The solid red line is your 1.56, and your dotted red line is your 80%. So you can see that there's been a few months where we've gotten up to the 80%. In December, we had a very high flow rate. What these spikes are here, and I'll jump over to the next slide, is that the spikes are indicative of the I&I. And does everybody understand the term when I say I&I, inflow and infiltration, what that is? Okay. So while we can regulate the new flow coming in through the connections, we have the ability and the power to say, okay, how much is being proposed, and we can grant or deny those sorts of flows. The I&I is very difficult to regulate. It's difficult to predict. We know it's coming with the increase in storms, sea level rise, climate change, all this going on. It's a safe bet to say that the I&I is definitely not going down. It's only coming up. So again, we have to consider that when we're looking at our alternatives. If our known flows are close to that 80%, the observed spikes in the I&I, that can easily exceed the 100% capacity for a given month. It can push us right over. If we have another situation like we did in March of 2018 with the 3 back-to-back nor'easters, it would definitely push it up over the flow. So the next slide here, there's a lot of information. This is a good slide. So in summary, your 2019 average flow is the 1.182. Your capacity is 1.56. Very simple math. Well, what's remaining? 378,000 gallons. Well, it doesn't seem like this much of a big deal, but if you look at the commitments and what's remaining, the commitments alone are 200,000 gallons, because Bourne is using roughly 90 or 100,000 gallons per day per their IMA. They have another 100,000 gallons. These are the other commitments that we're aware of, and these other commitments here total 100,000 gallons. So that's, 200,000 gallons has already been committed. So that 378,000 drops to 178,000. There's future discussion about, other developments and other things going on in town. But what the other consideration is for the remaining 178,000 after the commitments is the I&I. So the way the plant operates now is we're all familiar that they have these big equalization basins out there. They're about a million gallons each, roughly 1 acre in size. So when those basins fill up, like they have been, that flow has to be pumped back into the plant. So on any given day, when they're pumping that back into the plant, that can be 50 or 100,000 gallons just to drain those basins out, which we have to do. So that's why when you look at the numbers, what has been committed with the I&I and the future discussions, or the future, some of the future projects going on, these are the numbers, and we're getting very close, if not at capacity, once the commitments tie in. So recommendations, what are we talking about here? How do we move forward? So it's likely in 2020, we talked about we may exceed the 80% capacity. So if that happens in calendar year 2020, by March of 2021, that's when this report of the plan to DEP would be due to identify the remaining flow, and then also what the next steps are. It should be, I understand the town's going through a revision to the CWMP, which is a comprehensive wastewater management plan. This report is an appropriate document to include that information. So we would strongly suggest that the information that's needed for the plan is included in that CWMP. So we have that in calendar year 2020. When it comes time to submit it, we can submit it to DEP. And again, knowing that we're getting very close to the flows, any applicable town department that knows of projects coming up, that knows development, there should be a good collaboration so we can have a solid plan for what all the commitments are, what all the projects are. It seems that every time I take a trip down to the water pollution control facility, there's another project, there's just something going on. And then you get the unknowns. You get there's an article in the paper about a casino that wants to, these things happen, they pop up like that. And, there needs to be consideration for for future developments. So when you talk, if you look at wastewater in a big picture, you have the treatment side of it, there's how much you can treat, and then you have to discharge it somewhere. You have to put it somewhere. Doesn't matter if the plant can treat 10 million gallons a day. If your discharge permit's only for 1.56, that's all you can let go. That's the number that really governs the flow coming to the plant. So it's highly unlikely that DEP will allow any additional flow to go to the Agawam River through the outfall where it is right now. Just given the characteristics of the river, it's a shallow, impaired water body. They just wouldn't allow any more nitrogen to go into that system. So what does that mean? That means that the town needs to start thinking about or considering other discharge opportunities. So when you look at just, we talked about the treatment being one portion, the discharge being one. If you look at the discharge, the two major disposal techniques, I guess you could say, are a groundwater discharge and a surface water discharge. A surface water discharge is an outfall. It's what the town has now. Goes to the Agawam River. A groundwater discharge would be something like this, an infiltration bed. This is in the town of Falmouth. This is something that's discharged through the soil media into the groundwater. Each one of these beds is roughly 40,000 square feet, about 1 acre each. And I think, Mark, what was it, for 300,000 or 400,000 gallons per day?
300.
So again, it's very important for the town to determine what this number is that they need for the next 20 years, and then also what is a build-out number at your maximum potential. Those two numbers may be very close, but once you know how much you need to discharge, you can start thinking about, okay, well, if it's going to be another 1 million gallons, it's going to be, roughly 10 acres of land that we need, so you can start going, there's a defined process when you're seeking a groundwater discharge to evaluate where the optimal sites are. But you really need to know, you have to have a good number for what you're planning on in the future to discharge. The other form of treatment is a surface water discharge. This is a project in Rehoboth Beach that we worked on. This is a boat pulling out a new ocean outfall pipe. Ocean outfalls are great. I'm going to talk a little bit. We've been involved in this, the regionalization project, which is fantastic. It talks about putting a new force main to the canal to solve all the discharge issues. And it's a terrific project, but one of my main concerns is that Wareham's need for future capacity is going to become well before that project may be a reality. We don't want to be in a position where the town hits 100% capacity and says, what do we do now? Because best case scenario, when you plan for an additional discharge or additional capacity, whether it's a groundwater or surface water, there's steps to that. There's engineering, there's permitting, there's planning. It's best case scenario, it's several years, and then you have to implement it to get it in, to construct it, to build it. You're talking 3 to 5 years for best case scenario. So you don't want to get to the point when you're at 100% capacity and then everything shuts down for this 3 to 5 years because you have to start the process then. So as difficult as some of these numbers may be to hear, I think it's good that we're capturing this now and we can start to think about the process moving forward. We have as part of that, when I say SNEP, it's the Southeast New England Estuaries Program, I believe it is. It's the grant that is funding this regionalization look. So as part of that, we looked at upgrading the plant in different scenarios. What we're looking at here is the existing plant, the buildings that are in kind of like the light beige color, those are existing buildings on the site now. Everything in blue is a proposed, either a tank, a clarifier, a different part of the plant. And this is for a 3.5 million gallon plant. We're going to look at increments as part of this grant at 2.5 million gallons, 3 million gallons, 3.5 million gallons. We are going to prepare costs for that. We expect to have those prepared in April at some point. We are on track to have those pulled together. And the plant itself is actually designed for 2 million gallons. The issue is your discharge permit's only for 1.56. So if you can find another area, whether it's a canal discharge, if it's a groundwater discharge, the plant can jump right up to that 2 million gallons. This is as part of that SNEP project. Again, these are all the areas in the other towns, and this will be brief, but we looked at portions of Bourne, Plymouth, all these blue areas. These are areas that were identified in the previous CWMP for future sewer expansion. So that slide that talked about all the commitments, we didn't even have all these areas for future expansion on there. And that's several hundreds of thousands of gallons as well. So you can see that we're trying to focus on the imminent needs of the town, but again, there's some long-term planning items that we have to look at. So that's the discussion on capacity. I'm going to move into an update on the third equalization basin and talk about the odors. Are there any questions about the capacity? Has everyone hopefully understood what has been presented so far? Okay. So you shift gears a little bit. This is the third equalization basin that we discussed, and for an update, we're designing it now. We are going to be submitting a grant in April for approximately a little over $1 million to help fund that. We think we can potentially get more, and we think there's a high probability of it getting funded. So that would be terrific to get that grant to offset some of the construction costs for that. Now, the intent of that basin is to solve the problem of these discharges where when the equalization basins right now are full, the plant is forced to discharge to these unlined areas. So that's the primary goal of the third, what I'm calling the third equalization basin, is to make sure town doesn't get fined or violate their permit. There are other benefits of the third equalization basin, which I'm going to talk about momentarily when we move into the discussion about the odors. We were asked to come back with a number for the cost of the new denitrification filters. So I know this is extremely difficult to see, but everything in green here is the existing filter building. So we did a conceptual layout of the new filters. The number we came up with was $2 million for total project costs. That includes the construction, the engineering, the whole thing. So that would be one of the numbers we'd request for spring town meeting for the new denitrification filters. And again, the reason why we're doing this is because that's one of the bottlenecks in the plant. When a high flow goes into that, they get clogged, it backs up the whole plant. There's just a whole snowball of problems that happen when these filters get clogged. And also, it's to bring the plant up to current codes. Current codes state you have to have redundant filters, so we're aiming to do that with the new denitrification filters. Okay, odors. I know this is a very sensitive subject, and every time we have to give a presentation about a sensitive subject, I always try to put myself in the position of a resident who's impacted. What if I was sitting on the board and I had to make these decisions? So I really do try to look at it from all angles. Sometimes it's difficult to make everybody happy, but definitely going to give it our best shot. So I thought it was important to discuss where these odors are coming from. One of the other items that was handed out along with the presentation is just a 4-page report from, I think it was 2016, from another consulting firm that did a study on the odors, and we read it and we agree with it. So what we're looking at here is obviously the biggest source of these odors is coming from the raw wastewater lagoons, or the equalization basins that are out there now. But why are the odors coming from those? Is because of the solids buildups, like when the solids come in there, and when you can't drain down those basins, you can't maintain them properly, so you have these solids that sit in there for a long period of time. If you have warm weather, it becomes very, very offensive, the odors. Another issue is that, so this is a cross-section from the design of the basins that are out there now. You can see this dotted red line, that's the slope at the bottom of the basin. It's a very shallow slope, so these solids cannot make it to the sump. They tend to disperse all throughout the basin, which again, that's an issue of the odors. And plus the sump is located right in the center of these lagoons, so it's very difficult to maintain that, to get out there and properly keep these clean. So these are all issues that we identified and incorporated, make sure we didn't basically make the same mistakes for the third equalization basin. So yes, the more the odors are as bad as they are, because the more dependency we put on to these equalization basins, the more the odors are going to come. Talking about just equalization in general, they aren't designed to be kept full as they are now. Right now, the plant is not operating as it was designed. When you have an acre of raw wastewater that's not covered, it's extremely difficult to mitigate those odors. It's impossible to capture them all. You know, I've been asked before, saying that, you know, are there any solutions that can get rid of the odors? Nothing we do can get rid of odors. There are great improvements we can make, but it's a wastewater treatment facility. There's always going to be some degree of odors out there. So just going back to that, so real quick, so the more we depend on those lagoons, the more we're going to have issues with odors. So unfortunately, as it stands right now, the more flow we connect, or that we connect to the treatment facility, the more we're going to depend on the lagoons, so the more odors we're going to have. And that's the unfortunate bottom line, as it stands right now. I kind of went over this in the previous slide. It was just a background of why we're here today, so I'm just going to fast forward through this one. So the current conditions at the plant is that the treatment facility, it's really using these EQ basins much more than they were intended for. The best way to get rid of the odors is to reduce the dependency of using these equalization lagoons. One of the items we talked about with the implementation of the third equalization basin is that when we put that in, we're going to be filling that with partially treated wastewater. It's going to be connected to the clarifiers. As it comes out of there, we're going to be putting a product in these equalization lagoons that does not have the solids that the raw wastewater has. Equalization can really be done anywhere in the treatment process, so we're doing it midstream. We wanted to make sure we're putting a product in there that does not have the solids. And likewise, that's going to greatly reduce the odors as well. We are designing a more aggressive slope to the bottom of these basins so they can be maintained better, and we're putting the sumps at an area close to the perimeter, so you can go in there with a machine with the appropriate cleaning mechanisms to go in there and clean out these basins. So we strongly feel, highly confident, that the implementation of these is going to help the odor problem. There are some other solutions that we can look at for the odors. One of the techniques is to do what they call chemical feed. There's various chemicals that can be injected into the process at various systems. A lot of this has been tried before, so we don't want to just duplicate things that don't work. We want to make sure that we do it right, and we are in the process of looking into this. Again, we feel that reducing the dependency of these basins is your best bet, but if we feel there's a solution through chemical feed, that this might be another option we can look at. I just want to call out that report that was attached to your package. It's 4 pages. It's not very long. It's very informative. I would suggest reading it if you do have some spare time to read. That report makes recommendations on the short term, midterm, and long term. A lot of these recommendations have to do with just general operations and maintenance, keeping the existing equalization basins clean, which the town is doing now as much as they can. But again, it's tough to do when they're always full.
Why can't you make them, instead of using them for solids coming in, use them as buffers before it goes out to the river?
And that's exactly what we're doing with the third. So right now, the piping isn't set up for that to happen. So with this third equalization basin that we're putting in, that's exactly what we're doing. We're putting it.
You've taken most of the odors out, and it's just sitting there waiting to hit the river.
Correct.
'Cause
Correct.
you're saying the plant can do 2 million gallons of processing, but yet only can put 1.5 in, so, if you take it in, you just kind of buffer it on the other side, instead
Correct.
of buffering it on the hot side.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what we're doing. I have a slide coming up that shows that. And so the plant can put more than 1.56 on a given day. It's 1.56 averaged over a month.
Right.
So if, we have a given month that they're down at 1.2, 1.3, and then the last week we get a big storm, they can open it up more. But the problem now is if they tried to do that, those denitrification filters would back up. And that's,
By adding more denitrification filters, doesn't that help you with your dump into the river too?
well, it would go through the same amount. These are redundant.
Change the formula or something?
These would be redundant filters to what they have now. So the town is putting an exceptionally clean product into the river. In fact,
That's one of the things, we were real low, right, 2% or something?
very low.
We're 2 parts per million average, 7-month rolling. Our permit is 4 parts per million. So it's not the product we're putting in the river. And also where it's going to be put in the third basin, it still has to be treated. It's not completely treated. It still has to go through UV. So it's got to be reintroduced before I can send it out to the river.
Okay. Thank you, sorry.
So I have a slide here that talks about some of these, the high impact solutions for odors. If we were to look at covering the existing equalization basins, which if we...
Another option.
It is another option. In order to treat odors, you have to capture them. How do you capture them? You cover them. And then once you capture them, you have to treat them through some sort of filter, whether it's a charcoal filter, things like that. I believe this was looked at a few years ago, and it was just a ballpark cost of $4 million. So you're probably in the $5 to $10 million range for to cover these basins and to put in a filtration system that can treat these odors, it is a high capital cost, and you get zero additional treatment out of that. So where I'm going with this is if the town does decide it needs additional flow and this treatment plant does have to be upgraded at some point, obviously if it's upgraded in the future, we would put in the appropriately sized structures, headworks, the tanks, that we could greatly eliminate the dependency of the equalization basins. A plant would be built for a proper size. You always want to have these equalization basins. We get asked the question a lot, what are you doing for climate change, sea level rise, all this sort of stuff. Once we put the third basin in, the plant will have roughly 4 million gallons of equalization capacity. So just picture, even if we did upgrade the plant and made it all brand new, picture the event if we had a hurricane that stalled over and we got 10 inches of rain, 12 inches of rain. You would need to have these basins. You can't size up a treatment facility for that grandiose of an event. It just wouldn't be wouldn't make financial sense. So having this 4 million gallons of equalization is a great thing to have for, to combat the sea level rise, climate change. So there's really 3 benefits with this third equalization basin. You get the number 1 benefit of getting out of the concern of violating the permit, getting fined, helps with the odors, and then you also put in improvements for, the future, the sea level rise, climate change, things like that.
The other option is to have some surface discharge.
Excuse me?
The other option is to have some surface discharge someplace.
Correct.
To help with the whole buffering.
Absolutely, and that's...
But do we have any place to put that?
We would have to, so there's an evaluation you go through. The first thing you'd want to look at is where the undeveloped parcels are. Are there any that are town-owned that have a suitable size? How close are they to the plant? What are the soil characteristics? You have to go out there and do infiltration tests. There's a number of steps you have to go through, but it's a quicker alternative than an outfall for sure.
I can tell you, everything perks in Wareham. Unless you're out in Shangri-La.
That is so let's get it as close as possible then.
Glacial till out there, but everywhere else is sand.
Right. No, understood. So a groundwater discharge is definitely a quicker process. Now, it will be extremely high likelihood if there was a groundwater discharge granted, because that nitrogen is still going through the soil into the groundwater and likely back into the same estuary, whether it's the Agawam River, where it is.
Different, but it'd be in the aquifer by then and not at the level of the river.
Be at the aquifer, but it would still end up, the nitrogen would still end up getting into the river and impacting it. It's what the offset would be is the town would likely have to expand sewers to pick up more septic systems to compensate for that. So along with the groundwater discharge would have to be a suitable amount of expansion. So again, it's not cheap to do, it's expensive, but it's likely going to be a necessity in the future. So what I'm up against with the odors, or where the dilemma lies, is that, do you do a $5 or $10 million capital upgrade that if at some point in the near future, you have to do a plant upgrade, and that's really the time to incorporate your odor upgrades. You don't want to spend $10 million now if you know you're going to have to spend another large chunk of money in the future upgrading the plant. But now if I'm a resident at home watching this, that's in the area, I just got very upset because what do you mean you're not doing anything? So what I would say is that we have to rely on the process we're going through now with the third equalization basin. We can strongly anticipate an increase in odors. I'm sure someone's going to ask, well, what percentage do you think they're going to be reduced? On a scale from 1 to 10, how much are they going to be reduced? And we're very hesitant to give out numbers because it's just a very tough thing to put a percentage on. I mean, some people have, it's a hard thing to put a defined number to, but we are very confident that's going to make a help with the odor. So we want to see how that goes by implementing that. We are still going to research if there's any sort of chemical additions that we can do. Generally, you don't want to do chemicals for the long term because it's very costly. You have to buy the chemicals. If it's a short-term thing for a few years, maybe it's more financially feasible.
It's really just like, putting Febreze on the issue.
Exactly.
Really, I mean, that's really...
Counteractant. Yep.
And it doesn't mean anything.
Yep. So even with the chemical feed system, if there was one that we felt was suitable, you still need to incorporate a storage area for that, a delivery system. I mean, even the chemical feed system's on the ballpark of $1 to $3 million, which is a cheaper alternative. But, and again, that does not include the cost of purchasing the chemicals for a long term. So it's a very challenging subject to tackle.
If I could add one thing, the chemicals that you could add in to the wastewater would do more than just mask. They would help to actually reduce odors, not eliminate, but would help to reduce. Okay, so that's.
The chemical would change some bond in the odor, obviously. I mean, whatever it's designed to do, whether it rips off whatever molecule it's going to rip off and do whatever. But it's really masking. The odor's still there. It's just being masked by a chemical.
It's actually not there. Only if you take a sulfide product, sulfur is very prevalent in our water. It's the sulfides that kill us. And so one of the things you can do to keep sulfides from releasing from the water is to oxidate. You oxidize it. So it doesn't even form into the H2S bond. It doesn't even get there, so it's eliminated. The problem we have is that our process starts with anoxic, which says no air. It says 0.2 milligrams per liter of dissolved oxygen or less. When you add an oxidizer to handle the sulfide, you get rid of that. Absolutely, you can add tons of it, but then when it hits the process, it upsets the entire plant because the oxygen, the bacteria in the anoxic won't go after the nitrogen compound. It's easier for the free oxygen, so it becomes a dilemma. So how much do you add? And that's where the balancing act is. And to put enough to eliminate odors would totally upset the plant. So we'll continue to add chemicals, no ifs, ands, and buts about it. At the pump stations, we can add tons of bleach with an oxidizer and check the residuals so it doesn't affect the plant when it gets to the EQ basin. In the EQ basins, we have to be very careful because that's directly discharged right to the anoxic. When we empty those basins, which takes quite a lot of time, right to the anoxic, and it upsets the plant.
Because you got two of them still on that side, and this one's going to be on the other side now.
So that's the back end. So the back end is a
Discharge
better,
side
absolutely.
takes care of that problem.
It's a better deal, absolutely.
So is it easy, can you take the other two off the other side and turn them into discharge basins?
You can't, only because, and I think Russ can answer this also better, but when you get that peak flow, the plant is designed for around 1,400 gallons per minute. Okay. When you see 2,500 gallons per minute, there's no way I can bring it in, no way. So it's got to go to the basin. And so we're thinking when we get to that peak flow, we'll push as much as we can in without disrupting the process.
So when it's at its peak like that, it's mostly water. Because
but
it's
still,
inflow.
It's
mostly pump water going in, so the majority of it would be just plain water.
And I don't disagree because it is diluted.
We're treating water.
And it is diluted, but the odor is still there in the basin. But yeah, we can't keep up, and it just all goes in the basin. And then the dilemma after that is if I'm carrying 200,000 gallons of sewer in the basins, at the rate to bring it back in, I can only bring in probably 30, 40,000 gallons a day at the best because I still got the flow coming on, so I can't take it out. So it's just, it exasperates the time, and then it becomes very odorous because now it's setting and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So that's the other dilemma.
So you want to continue?
I'm almost done, actually. Okay. But you're correct with that. A lot of that flow coming in is water, cyanide, but the more, as long as there's liquid in those basins, you can't properly clean them out. And again, it mixes with the raw, it turns septic, and just
That's going to be mixed with some raw stuff, obviously.
Yep. So this is just a slide here. It just shows. So here are the existing EQ basins that get the raw wastewater from the headworks. So what we're planning on doing, there's a pipe after it goes through the clarifiers, there's a pipe that goes to the denitrification filters. We're basically going to tap into that and draw the wastewater off. So this just shows, photographically, how we're planning on doing this. And then we would, again, the existing, these would be secondary basins. So we would try just to minimize as much as possible the use of those. So as far as the Springtown meeting goes with the discussion on odors, we are expecting improvements of the third EQ basin. So that is definitely something we can deliver to residents and to the public now. There's a few high-impact solutions that we talked about, that covering the basins for a large expenditure. I don't know how comfortable we would be recommending spending that sort of money to cover these if we know in the future there may be a plant expansion when that's where we incorporate the improvements to handle the peak flows. It's definitely something we can look into if we're asked to do so. But again, I'd really like to see how the results from that third equalization basin pans out with regards to the odors.
You know, this plant expansion could never,
Could not.
just, I mean,
Could not.
you know, we don't know this.
We don't.
I mean, I know that the Buzzards Bay Coalition, everybody's pushing to have a regionalized plant and, you know, outflow pipes and all that. But, you know, so far, we haven't been, there's been no real conversation with any of the other partners, and nobody else is stepping up to the plate.
Right.
And so that's problematic, because, you know, Wareham's not gonna spend $25 million to run a pipe down to someplace hoping that people come. You know, build it and they'll come? I don't think so.
So I really tried to focus this presentation on the needs of Wareham. You know,
Exactly.
there's a little bit of the regionalization is well and good, but I do think the town's needs are gonna come before that
My
project.
point exactly. So maybe we need to start looking at some of the changes now, regardless of what's gonna happen in the future, even if it is gonna cost us some money.
Specific to Wareham, you're absolutely right.
I would
like that.
definitely recommend that the town start looking at their own individual needs for the future, starting with a very defined number for, you know, what are all the projects in town now? What is the build-out? What do we need in 20 years? And then what's our ultimate build-out? Because all of those numbers kind of drive the evaluations for a groundwater discharge.
That helps us, and, you know, us is matters. All I care about is the people of this town. I don't have to worry about Bourne or Marion or anybody else. You know, that's what they pay me for up here. Oh, wait a minute.
Totally understood. I
Big
mean,
money.
I agree. I mean, the regionalization's it's a great project in theory, but again, we have to focus on what Wareham needs.
You know, the way government turns, it took 35 years to get the road done out on Cranberry Highway. And we didn't even get the whole thing. We only got 1.8 miles of it. 35 years, so who knows how long this would take. So we have to think about Wareham right now, and we have to start thinking about what we gotta do to take care of us.
Absolutely. And again, this isn't, so the information from the flows, we didn't have this at the previous, obviously, as soon as we realized this, that's when I reached out to Guy and said, listen, we have to present, we need to act on this now. It's very urgent. As an optional suggestion for town meeting, I'd propose this. If the town wanted to, so any solution for the odors, it requires an engineering design. There's that component, and then there's obviously the construction. At the highest end of the improvements, even if you said, yep, we want to cover the basins, go look at that, you're probably looking at a design fee somewhere in the $200,000 range. So as an optional item for the Springtown meeting, if the town wanted to appropriate up to, say, $200,000 for design funds, that way come the end of spring or summer, if we have, hey, guess what, we found this chemical, we think it's going to work great, or we think we found some covers that we can design, the funds are there, and we can just move right into design to keep the project moving along. That's just one option. I do not have a finite design or plan other than that third equalization basin at this time. I wanted to present some of these options to the board and get some feedback.
So what are you looking for, really?
Derek, go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jim.
No, what are you looking for?
So what we'd ask then, if
Well, you need $2 million for the D-night filters,
Correct.
right?
That's what you're really here for at this point in time.
correct.
Denitrification, adding a third denitrification.
But this is redundancy filters.
It's an additional, that's redundant.
Correct, for the D-night filter, and also for the third basin, we presented that tonight, so that's why we're here tonight,
Did
yes.
we already fund the third equalization?
We're good with that.
Yep.
So those, yes, but we want to update you on that
That's good.
process.
Getting a grant on it, so we might only have to pay as much as we appropriated up to, correct?
Less than what you
Less than to,
appropriate.
yes, you're correct.
So now you're looking for the D-night, which you're looking also to get grants for to reduce the cost. That's what you're looking to put on for the warrant, right?
So the whole cost of the D-Night's $2 million. Obviously, if there's grants available, we'd
Yeah, we
definitely
just
seek it
reduce
out.
what you spent, yeah.
No, but
We can't promise the grant for the D-nights, but we earlier applied for a grant for the equalization basins. We couldn't start it this year, so we were not recognized. However, they said resubmit in the spring, so we're going to reapply for that. They like the project, so that 1.1 or 1.2 we're going to reapply for, and that'll go to help us offset the costs of the money we already appropriated at town meeting for the third basin.
pay for the cost of this, the $2 million cost.
we're going to go to town meeting for an article to pay for that, because originally we went for the whole $10 million, and I think the town felt, which is rightfully, it wasn't a hard number. So we're working towards hard numbers, and we'll fund hard numbers as we go.
Water pollution control facility funds?
Yes, we will. Or
Have any on hand to cover partial?
I believe so, but let the finance people, but I believe so. Also, remember, we're to get on a list for funding or borrowing from the SRF funding.
Sure.
And that list
Mary, can you
hasn't
turn
been
the lights
released. Usually we see it in January. We haven't seen it yet. So when that list comes out, if we're on that list, then we'll try to
that's
borrow
what
if that
you
was a
were
0% interest. So we'll look to get that too. So
didn't
there's a
hear
couple
you.
of options we have.
That's
But if all fails, we'd look towards retained earnings. If we had the funds available, we'd look into that. And we talk to John, and we involve a lot of people as the best approach for the town, generally speaking, to finance this or to pay for it.
Be ratepayer or?
I will be ratepayer. Most time, anything we do with sewer department is ratepayer.
What would the impact be if it was a full?
I can't tell you, I can't tell you the exact cost right now, but at a 0% interest, I think it would help. So I can't give you those hard numbers now.
There's a pretty good rate right now coming down. Derek, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, we need to nail down the funding source. It can't be borrowing or retained earnings or the budget when we finally go to
No,
a
that's
motion on it.
absolutely.
So we have to, it has to be the choice. This would be on the special town meeting, so no words for tonight. But, you know, up until the final motion for town meeting, you could have borrowing or you could have, you know, transfer from retained earnings. But when it comes to that, we have to have the funding mechanism.
I rely on your expertise, you know, you would help us through that process, and of course, to Attorney Moser, we'd rely, I'm just telling you, I can throw all this out there, but you would be the one that would direct or to advise is the best way to finance
So
it.
if our intent is to go through SRF, that would be funded, that would be borrowing it, and I'm guessing if we don't get that, we could go out, we could bond it out as well, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, so it has not been released if we're on the list for SR funding. If we do appear on that list, we applied for up to 10 million, and we could borrow that money as much as we needed to do the projects as we went along, and that would be the borrowing.
And the reason we're not going to October is that their deadline is before October, so it's just sort of a timing issue. So it makes sense to do it at this town meeting for the SRF funding, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
For how much?
We don't know the number
I would
yet.
say, I would, if I were them, I'd go for the full 2 million if you could, right.
Okay. Anybody else got questions? I got to say one thing, and this is for you, and I'm going to chastise you a little, whether because you deserve it. You know, I was pretty embarrassed to see tape, duct tape, and plastic bags around stuff.
Can I explain that?
In the plant. Somehow, those things shouldn't happen. I don't know. I mean, I know that if I get a leak in my house and I got a problem, I get it fixed right away.
We had to do 3 before it, which was $13 million. That's in process. So we had to put a line stop. We had to put 2 valves, and so while we're doing these valves,
I
that
see
valve is-
saran wrap, and I see
that's the valve.
plastic, and I see
Absolutely.
bags, and it's embarrassing.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you.
And you have to take that because you're in
I'm
charge.
telling you, and that's why I want to explain to you. One of the pumps we replaced was $33,000. The other 2 will get rebuilt, so that's probably an $80,000, $90,000 project. I did $33,000. That one pump's done. On the plant water, we've ordered 2 pumps, 2 motors. So in the interim, while I'm waiting for this, and plus the lead time, I got to do something to contain it. So we put around, why we do is put it around it so the water doesn't go everywhere. It contains it, it drops down, we collect it. We replace one, and now we'll get to the final. So it's a process. Been doing it for last year. It's a working process.
It was industrial saran wrap.
It was. I can promise you that. It was industrial saran wrap. It's designed for that.
That's very nice.
It
but-
was designed to do what it's
Very
done.
nice, but put some lead,
Yeah,
get the
absolutely.
lead out and put something in it and see what, get the dough together, do whatever it takes.
We're trying. It's all
and just get
finances.
it done, whatever. Call and get the guys in there, whatever.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, I know.
Russ, thank you.
You're welcome. If I can just, 30 more seconds to touch
Yes, you
upon
can.
the final slide, and I apologize to all the people in the crowd.
But you can be last.
Just the real takeaways from this. So, again, based on the 2019 flows, it's very likely in 2020 the town's going to exceed the 80% capacity. Now, if you look at your expansion and it's anything over 2 million gallons, the plant will have to be upgraded. It might be a small upgrade, it might be to 2.5, and we've already started looking at some of those numbers, so we want to be prepared with that when the time comes. Odors, they're based on the frequent use of the EQ basins. Right now, the plant is not operating as it was designed, so we're looking to help mitigate that with the third basin. But any additional flow that comes to the plant now that's new, you know, the raw wastewater, it's only going to increase the dependency and the use of the basin, so it's only going to result in increased odors. Some of the high-impact solutions for the odors are very costly. We need to figure out if that's in the best financial interest of the ratepayers, the residents, the town itself. We would like to implement that third basin to see if it works. And then lastly, the cost for the town meeting, $2 million for the new denitrification filters. And if the board thinks it's an appropriate idea to have that sum, that $200,000 set aside, we may come back and say, listen, there's just not a really good solution, or there may be a solution, we think it's going to be $50,000. It's just to have that money ready so we can move right into the design phase. That would be the other item that we may want to have on the spring town meeting article.
Okay, now, as far as the odors are concerned, you know, if I live underneath it, right, whatever you have to spend is not enough.
That's right.
To get rid of those odors, okay? You know, if I'm on the other side of town and I don't smell anything, it doesn't bother me. I don't say anything, I don't complain.
Sure.
But, you know, I have the right, no matter where I live in this town, to live and enjoy the town. It's a beautiful town, and I should be able to enjoy it.
Sure.
And odors shouldn't be my issue. That's our issue. We should be taking care of them. We should have started this freaking 10, 15 years ago, straightening this out. 20 years ago. When we built the new plant, we knew if we knew this was going to be a problem, we should have dealt with it. But we didn't. And so now we're playing catch up. You know? So, okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, finally, when we talk about capacity and we're approaching it, we need to be very careful when we talk about expanding existing connections, expand their flow, and new flow. So I think as we move forward, we really need to communicate is what's happening, and the limited flow we have less was less than 60,000 gallons per day, how we're going to allocate those flows.
Well, I think I saw your list of commitments, and I thought I saw some missing in that list of commitments.
Oh, there are some missing. We've got development, we've got Minor Forest has, I think, 8 duplexes going in. We have duplexes in Rose Point, duplexes on Swiss Beach Road. There's other things that we haven't even mentioned in it, so there's other things that are coming online. So,
right, exactly.
Yeah, so we have to be very cautious.
You know, I know that you've given out and said, okay, yeah, I've got capacity for you and whatever. You know, we got to take those into account, because you can't all of a sudden turn around and tell those people, oh, you can't have it.
Absolutely.
After you're committed to them.
Sure.
And there's businesses that are looking to expand flow, change their design, change flow. Those have to be looked at hard, because that takes capacity. So it's not just simply, you know, dealing with connections, but it's also the increase of flows to certain connections.
We're going to have to think about some kind of surface discharge if we can't get them to give us more discharge in the river. Although, you know, I can't understand it. Nitrogen's the issue.
So we did, one of the things we looked at, so your permit now is for 4 milligrams per liter, and the town is obviously doing a great job of putting it lower. So common math tells you, well, if we can lower that to 3 milligrams per liter, can we put more effluent out to the river? And the numbers work to, you know, about 2 million gallons would give you the same.
Yeah.
The issue with that is that all your other parameters for your discharge will also be altered, and those may require additional upgrades. So it's not just nitrogen. You can't negotiate
That's
the
something you need to look at.
We will.
That's something we need to look at.
We will, yep.
So that we can make it work. Go ahead, Peter.
Have the sewer commissioners weighed in with this? Do they have a recommendation to us?
You can talk
Actually,
to them.
a request for a warrant article at this point?
This was presented to them also. I don't know, next meeting when it becomes for March, but we'll get into specific articles moving forward, but I don't have anything on hand right this moment.
Okay.
But they are aware, and they will weigh in.
Okay, thank you.
With you folks.
And we need to get this to the
What is that noise?
capital planning as well.
I'm sorry?
We
Is
need
that
to
your
get
phone, Alan?
We need to get this capital planning as well.
Okay.
Because they're meeting Thursday, so.
Okay.
Alan, a question?
Alan, go ahead.
Just some comments. As a ratepayer, I would not be very happy to spend any money at all that's going to increase my rates if there's no guarantee of what's going to happen. I mean, it's like sitting there and having a wish and it doesn't happen. The bottom line is, I think this plant that we have existing is probably at its capacity. The idea of putting more money into to expand it, I don't believe the EPA, et cetera, is going to allow us to dump any more, you know, into the river itself at this point in time. If we're looking at long-term and we're saying, well, the project with the Mass Maritime may or may not happen, we can't really depend on it, then we really need to look at having a second in-ground discharge plant somewhere else in
Yeah, we
town.
can do an in-ground
Because
someplace, or attached to it,
These
or
things don't
whatever.
happen in a couple of years, and we need to be realistic of what's going on. Because to spend money, it's
I
a
agree.
Band-Aid for an existing plant. If it's not going to be efficient work when it's over capacity, you need to go the next step. We
Well,
don't want to make
Headworks
the
isn't
mistakes that
right
we've done
either.
all along.
I remember when we did the headworks, that was the first thing they talked about was not big enough, when they did it right off the bat.
The headworks in trouble. We didn't show you pictures of the headwork.
That was from day one. It was right off
I'll
the
show you
bat.
those pictures. But that-
Right
that's
off the
in
bat, so, and I sat on that committee, so it was kind of interesting. $25 million upgrade.
You know, if the town wants to meet internally and talk about this planning, by all means, I'm more than happy to come down. We're extremely grateful for the town for the work that they've allowed us to do. So, anything we can do to help out with the process, just phone
Well, I think
call
you need
away.
to talk to the sewer commissioners and
Absolutely.
Guy, and I think you guys can come up with capital planning ultimately.
Sure.
Obviously, that it's over the threshold, so that's gotta happen. But this will go on the special anyway, because it won't help you otherwise till next year, so. All right? Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much. I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the update.
Welcome.
And sorry, Guy, I just had to do
Hey,
it.
let me say something. I probably, more than you, I chastised myself.
I'm
because
sure you
it's
did. It
all
looks-
funding and how do I do this? But then I said, Russ, why? But it needs to be shown. So I don't have a problem with it. Yes, thank you so much.
Leave it on, or shut it down?
All right, let's move on. Let's do the applications for Noria Energy Retail, Inc., DBA Amato, 2501 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, Mass. For a common vic. I don't understand
Why do we have it twice?
why we have two different names and two different, who, is they here? Are they here, by the way?
Right here.
Good. Why are you looking for two common vics?
We operate a convenience store, gas station, and then within inside of that establishment, we have another space where we're a sub shop. The Amatos is a sub shop.
I see, and then the other one, okay, all right, we get it now. All right, so, and the other thing they're looking for is a common vic for 2501 under the application of Noria, is that how you say it?
Correct.
Noria Energy Retail, Inc., which is not the Amato sub shop, okay? So go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I move that we approve the application from Noria Energy Retail, Inc., DBA Matos, to 2501 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, for a common vic license.
Motion made by Mary, seconded by Peter. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous. Next.
I move that we approve the application from Noria Energy Retail, Inc., 2501 Cranberry Highway, Wareham, for a common vic
Second.
license.
Motion made by Mary, seconded by Peter. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Next up, vote to establish the dates of the notice of intent of the 2020 Spring Special Town Meeting. You want to give it to Peter and let him read it?
I do want to give that to Peter.
All right, we'll hand it right over to him. Let's send it over to the speed reader. Although he's been kind of slow lately, I don't know.
Well, I don't speed read this because the media likes to
There you go.
make note of the dates.
Establish dates.
Establish the dates.
First we got the warrant, we got that. Okay, this is to establish the special town meeting that takes place within the spring annual town meeting. For those who are unfamiliar with the process, Madam Moderator will open town meeting up roughly 7 o'clock. At 7:30, we jump off of the regular town meeting warrant, we go into the special warrant. We do that until we're done, and then we go back and finish off the spring annual town meeting. So I'll read this. This is in the form of a motion, because we got to vote to adopt these dates. Town of Wareham, 54 Marion Road, Wareham, Mass. Process for calling a special town meeting at April 27th, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. within annual town meeting. Tuesday, February 11th, 2020, Board of Selectmen should establish all dates for completion of a warrant for the special town meeting. That's what we're doing right now. Friday, February 14th, 2020, last day to post in at least one public place in each precinct, notice of intention of Board of Selectmen to call a special town meeting for April 27th, 2020. This is under Bylaw Division 1, Article 1, Section 3. which is 10 days before a warrant can close. Thursday, March 5th, 2020, publication in local newspaper of notice of intent to call a special town meeting. This is under the charter at section 2-4C, 45 days or more before the date of town meeting. Thursday, March 12th, 2020 is the last day to submit articles to be inserted in the warrant. Tuesday, March 17th, 2020, the Board of Selectmen should officially close the warrant. Friday, March 20th, 2020, last day to post in each precinct and deliver a copy of warrant to the town moderator and to the chairman of each committee established by section 2-5 of the charter. That's under section 2-4D of the charter, which is within 3 days of the closing of the warrant. Thursday, April 2nd, 2020 is the last day to publish the entire warrant in a local newspaper. That's under the charter at section 2-4D, which is not less than 14 days before a town meeting. And on Monday, April 27th, 2020, the commencement of the special annual town meeting will take place.
Okay, motion made by Peters, seconded by Alan. I saw your hand over there. Is there any discussion? Okay, go ahead.
We do these, we do these special town meeting warrants every year. And we did change the dates that we could keep our regular town meeting warrant open to. And I believe that would be under the new provision, something like March 8th. And so what are we gaining? 7 days?
For what, the special, you mean?
Yeah.
The special is there because stuff that goes on the annual isn't available until the following year. It means after June 31st, June 30th, sorry.
So this should just be things that need to be done
Right, they can be done
between
right
now
away. Yes.
and July 1.
Correct.
Not everything catch-all under the sun.
No, it's
So
not a
has
catch-all.
anything been submitted for that? It has to be done within those timeframes. I'm just saying, we don't utilize the regular town meeting warrant and the timeframes that we could as it is. And we could have this open, we could extend our regular town meeting warrant for 3 more weeks.
Well,
And
except
accept
that
things
there are,
on it.
there
Because you
will-
can do that. You can extend the town meeting warrant, I
Well,
believe. The
there'll
closing
be-
date of it.
The sewer thing will have to be on this special in order to get that going by year's end.
If they want to do it by year's end, but they're
Well,
looking.
they have to, that's the plan, yeah.
Well, we already funded the equalization basins. That would be for the denitrification, which would probably start after July 1, because it's under a new budget.
Well, no, it's going to
Under-
be, and not if we put it on the special, they're going to be able to start right away.
But they could, correct.
Because they'll be able to order the filters and do whatever else they got to do.
I just don't think we utilize
The
the
special,
time that we have
There
in
will be
order to
others.
give people, committees, our town administrator when he's preparing the budget, capital planning, so that we have numbers on our annual,
Well,
on our annual meeting.
I can speak.
No matter what.
Well, no, but well, you know, it's become a habit.
It's a safety net.
So that's just my
Okay.
point on that.
All right.
You know,
Just one of the issues this year, of course, is that we had to set this process and set the deadlines for the town meeting because we couldn't presume that the legislation which was pending was going to pass.
but if you had counted the 45 days back, you would have been at March 8th anyhow.
Yeah.
You know, we
No, I
shut
get
it
it.
off a
Move-
month early. So
Yeah.
anyhow, that's all I had to say. about it.
all right,
But
thank you.
next year, then we'll be under that new regiment. We'll actually have to
Go ahead,
follow
I'm
that, so.
done.
We got to move, though, because we got a lot of work to do yet.
So we got the,
Okay.
I made a motion and I
So
think. we have-
motion made, I'm going to do a roll call on that. Alan? Yes or no?
Yes or no to what?
I don't even know what.
To the
The
motion.
motion.
The motion's on the floor to establish,
To accept the dates.
The speedball motion? Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Patrick, yes. Peter, yes, 500. Okay. Next up, what do we got?
We have to put articles on the warrant.
Yes, we have to do that next.
And there should be a separate.
We got it in, unfortunately, it came in our thing late, so.
Yeah. Should be a separate folder there for the little checklist that we use.
Yeah, there should be a little checklist in there. There you
Yep, that's
go.
the one there.
We need, here you go.
So,
You put them, you do the motions, Peter.
okay, just,
And let's get all that stuff on that we gotta get on.
Could we take, could we discuss extending the closing deadline for the warrant? For the regular warrant,
Why?
so we can get numbers and whatnot on the,
Well, just
on the
that
warrant?
would involve rewriting the whole warrant. I already did it once.
We'll just be putting numbers in it.
Yeah, but, you mean
In it-
into the warrant?
Well, they'll be available in motion
Well,
form.
plus you
It'll be
can,
available in the motions. The numbers will be there.
right.
I mean, substantially, it's
When-
not
when
going
will
to
they
change
be there?
anything. I mean, for example, we've got a budget article on here, Article number 7.
So we got a capital planning budget on there.
We actually did pretty good
Where
last
is
year.
it?
We kinda got them together pretty early. Most of them, right?
Putting stuff on there. We're putting stuff on there, I have no idea what we're putting on there.
I thought I
have a
was
bu-
on
it's a
top of him
blanket.
pretty good.
The capital plan, they haven't decided, Derek decides what he puts on it, doesn't he?
Let's move on and get these things on the warrant and keep going.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at Articles 1 through 10? I'll just briefly recite them. Article 1 is election of officers. Article 2, recurring business. Article 3, compensation of certain appointed officials. Actually, I think we changed it to election and elected and appointed officials in here. No, we called it certain officials. So that covers both elected and appointed.
Okay.
4 is the fiscal year 2020 revolving funds. 5 is occasional reports. 6 is the fiscal year 20 capital plan. 7 is the fiscal year 20 budget. 8 is the EMS budget. 9 is the Upper Cape Regional Technical School budget. And 10 is the Water Pollution Control Facility Enterprise Fund, which is, basically the
That's
sewer
your
budget.
motion to put them on the warrant?
Yes, my motion is to put all 10 of those on the warrant.
Motion made by Peter to put those 10 on the warrant. Motion seconded by Mary. Is there any more discussion? Go ahead, Alan.
On the one about the employees.
I can't hear you, Alan. Way back too far.
Yeah, sorry, lean back, Bob. Gotta get a chair that doesn't move. Just, do we have any numbers as far as what we have on the elected or appointed officials?
No, we don't have any numbers yet.
It's usually, the per diem was,
Claire, what's the per diem?
120, I think.
It's 120, it hasn't changed.
Okay.
Clerk would be 73,000, and they get 700 as the registrar.
Okay, so the clerk's salary's gone up?
Yep, still less than the department heads and stuff like that.
I was saying, do we know what the raise was?
No.
Sure you do.
Come on.
I could pull last year's warrant real quick,
Well, it wouldn't be the warrant, it would be the motions, because I think we did the same thing last year.
because if you remember, last year it was a bifurcated.
I know.
Mary Ann, I thought was about 80,000.
Yeah, Mary Ann was, because we reduced it with the new clerk. Okay, it's just nice to have, we know what we got.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous, 500. Go ahead, Peter.
Okay, Article number 11, which is the non-binding resolution to endorse the 2020 master plan. This would just be to ask town meeting to endorse the master plan. I believe this is on by way of request of the planning board.
Okay.
I actually spent a lot of time going through it, Richard had there. I submitted my copy to Ken about a week and a half ago, with a bunch of notes, and basically the way it's set up, anything that's of importance, they will update as they go along. So I have no problem. The plan is really well put together. Like, I give Richard and everybody else credit for what they did.
Okay, so motion made by Peter, seconded by Mary. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous, it's on.
Okay, you folks put on Article 12, which is the sign zoning bylaw. Article 13,
That, yeah.
which is the definition of a two-family or a duplex. Article 14, which is updates to FEMA floodplain. And Article 15, which is the fiscal year, and I gotta change this, 2021, Community Preservation Fund reserves.
Okay.
So that brings us to Article 16, which comes from the Director of Natural Resources. That's the Harbor Services Permit Receipts Reserved for Appropriations account. And he, to Selectman Manise's satisfaction, has a number.
Yes, he does.
Yes, they do.
So that's my motion to put that on.
Motion made by Peter, seconded by Alan. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous. Next.
Okay, rounding out the warrant here, Article 17, Charter Amendment, appointed town clerk, was put on the 28th last month. Same with the add sewer commissioners to elected officials. Same with delete the road commission. Article 20 is the transfer of the John William Deacon Elementary School at 760 Main Street, Wareham. We put that on the 28th. And all that remains is 2 petition articles, which go on by operation of law.
Okay, so we're all set. So everything's on.
I move we close the warrant.
Motion made by Peter, seconded by Alan. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous, 500. Thank you, folks. Next up, request to place signs on town property.
All right,
What is this? Oh, this is the observation.
yeah, yep.
All right, we're not gonna read all these.
No.
This is their yearly request for signs for their various events. And what they did is they listed all the events and the dates. As you can see, they're all here. If anybody wants to see it, or if you don't, I think you probably have one in your thing. Somebody's gotta move, we approve them, that's all.
All right, I move,
According to what we have in your hand there.
I move that we approve.
presented.
As presented in this handout, permission for the Onset Bay Association to put signs out for their.
Okay, motion made by Mary, seconded by Alan. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstaining, it's unanimous. All right, next up. All right, let's, we'll do the announcements and stuff at the end if you want. Nothing, 48 hours, right? Next is Town Administrator's Report, which is another presentation.
No, we'll do a presentation on the budget.
Budget presentation.
No, it should be on there before we print it in the paper.
This is a different one.
We shouldn't be. Should be ready. The number should be in the warrant before we put it in the
I didn't
paper.
sign this yet.
It's all supposed to be done.
This is meeting. You should have 2 sets. You should have the rules for what do you call it, the sending back and back. Exactly. Mary to sign. You just need to sign it. And so you weren't here to sign it the other day. You were clerk, so you have to sign.
They will be.
These are the ones we'll be approving later. All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is the overview of the budget that apparently disappeared on us on the screen there. We have a bit of a green screen issue now, but we'll see what happens.
Money is green.
Oh, pretty colors.
Yeah, no, that's not the ones that I chose. The conversion's changing them a little, but we'll live with it. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is the annual budget presentation. We know that what's presented tonight will not necessarily be what goes before town meeting, as we will have more iterations of the assessments from the state, county, different revenue numbers from them, and we also have a few other items that we don't get until roughly about March, even close to April. So, you start off with your FY20 levy limit, which is last year's final levy with the 2.5% increase plus the new growth. You do not include the debt exclusion in the levy, just so everyone knows. For calculating your new rate, your new growth and such. So we have a $42,357,500 42 million plus levy, 2.5% increase is $1,050,009. We're estimating new growth at 400,000. That should be a good conservative number and could come in just a little bit higher than that. It's just going to depend on what we pull in. Last year, it went over 500,000 when finalized. However, that was because we had a solar pilot agreement actually come online. So it's whatever's happening with this. It took it right off my screen. There we go.
Oh, that's just beautiful.
It's getting smaller.
Yeah, I'm going to blame Russ for using it before.
That's better.
Again, that brings us, then we have the debt exclusion for the new school, estimated about 2.5 million. That's going to be determined finally by what the borrowing actually comes back at, which we should see close to the, I believe, the end of March would be more of the numbers. So we're looking at, before the debt exclusion, $43,450,366. And then with the debt exclusion, $45,950,366. We then go to our state aid of, so with the Chapter 70 and the charter school. Our Chapter 70 went up about $72,000, not the return that we were hoping for from the Student Opportunity Act. And ironically, our charter aid went down $50,000. So the Student Opportunity Act was not the windfall that we hoped. It did seem to reduce some of the assessments, which allowed us overall a net gain, but that doesn't make sense because we were promised 100% funding of the charter schools. So the reimbursement, which would have brought us into close to the $600,000 range, and that did not happen. State aid, general government, that's based off of the consensus growth rate for the state revenue rate. So that's at 2.8%. Estimated local receipts are a little bit over 7 million. We've seen a couple trends that weren't as favorable, but it seems like the motor vehicle excise is up from our actual commitments in FY20. It's just tough we usually only use what we our total revenue that we gained in the prior full fiscal year, which would have been FY19. So basically this is what a lot of people like to see. Where does money come from? So about 60% is the levy limit, the 2.5%, 1% of our revenue, new growth another 1%, so you're looking at 62% from the levy, and then the debt exclusion adds you close to 66%. Between the state aid for Chapter 70 plus the state aid of the general government, that's 23%. Then the local receipts are another 10. The available funds are almost nothing. We sort of skipped over those. And then the enterprise fund direct is only about 1%. So when it comes down to it, we're getting from, while you might be paying some of the local receipts and stuff like that, we're getting 23% directly from the state and another 10% from non-real estate taxes. So this is more of the interesting one. This is the recap sheet items and what we call town meetings. That's how we break it down when you're actually going through and setting the tax rate and such. But the tuition assessments for the town, including charter and school choice, are over 3.2 million. Retired teachers' health insurance. Retired teachers are in the GIC, so we are assessed back from the town. So when you see our health insurance line, you'll see later, that does not include retired teachers. The state assessments, all other, that includes GATRA, mosquito control, and some of the other ones. Overlay is a reduction in our taxes for abatements and such. It used to be that you could only you'd have to do enough for each year, so they allowed you to combine it, which means you don't see us spiking as much. So in a reval year, you'd increase it by maybe 125,000. You don't have to do that anymore, as long as you're carrying a good enough balance. So when you look those items, so between the overlay and then the state assessments, state and county assessments, we're at 5.3 million. Health and dental insurance is 8.1 million. Plymouth County retirement in LiUNA is 4.2 million. 90,000 of that is the LiUNA. The rest is the Plymouth County retirement assessment. We will be fully funded if, on today's actuarial assessments, we're fully funded by 2029, which is ahead of the necessary 2040 schedule. So they're doing well. I remember that used to be a big issue when I first started, and we had a person that said the Plymouth County was bankrupting everybody by doing overestimating return rates, but they still use, I think, an 8.25, and their historic has been over 9%. So, general insurance and workers' comp, it also includes 111F, marina policies, all the motor vehicle. So those are our insurances, are 1.34 million. Medicare is 1.45% tax that we pay on payroll, so that's $540,750. Unemployment, we are self-insured. We pay in about $600 a quarter to the Commonwealth, and a little bit more to UTI, which is our unemployment insurance company. So when they track our employees that are going in for unemployment, and they will actually work with us on the cases if we're opposing unemployment and such. That's a difficult one because you have to go up to a few sessions up to Boston. We've had somebody quit and then file for unemployment. We've gone against it. We've won. Then they worked for somebody else for a few months, got fired from there, and we were assessed with the unemployment anyways. So it's kind of a difficult one. We park about 200,000 there. So we are technically self-funded. At some point, given our historic ranges have been between 75,000 and 258,000, really economic, dependent on how our budgets are in the overall economy. I am thinking about taking that out of the budget, using one-time free cash, setting aside the article so you can hit against that, because it kind of drives me crazy to hold up 200,000 that we could be using towards an officer or something like that. But it's just something to look into. However, we may also need that to offset some revenue loss with Covanta and CMAS, depending on the FY22 budget. So just something that it's just good to know that that's a future source potentially if we have to. We have life insurance that's reduced by about 5,000. That's the small benefit the employees get. It's 75-25 split on that, and it's a $10,000 policy through Boston Mutual. Veterans benefits, that is reimbursed at 75% up through the state aid. Well, that's some of the reimbursements. We've reduced that by about 20,000, just seeing the trends of the actual benefits that we pay out. So it is the community's obligation to pay those benefits or reimburse 75%. And there's been a few times, every now and again that will jump. Sometimes you have somebody move to the community that maybe has a backlog of payments, or there's some sort of fight. So we've been hit for a $23,000 extra assessment before, but you can't plan on those. But debt exclusion, again, that's the Gazinga and the Gazaga, if you will. That's just offsets the revenue that we pulled in. Debt principal, $500,000. Debt interest, long and short term. Our debt principal actual expenditures will be lower than that. I don't recommend going any lower than 500,000. We should be at 3% of our operating budget, which is closer to 2.1 million. So I also think if we're going to, in the future, fund a police station with the with some of the cannabis revenue and the debt, that is the best line to use. So I wouldn't go hog wild. I'd try and hold it in reserve. Serped's assessment is estimated, if I haven't received it yet, but 4,190, which was 2.5% increase. So the school budget is split up into two parts: the net and non-net. And the non-net's the school transportation. So the school operating budget's $28,257. $257,516. The school transportation budget is $1,974,100 for a total of $30,231,616. When we do the in-kind, so our total net school spending, our required net school, will probably be over, just a touch over 40 million when we bring the benefits back into it and such. Right now, we're over 127% of the minimum net school. General government, and that's roughly an $800,000 increase to the school budget. Upper Cape Cod Tech is only increasing about 26,000. We had 6 less kids, but that's an ebb and a flow. This year, Bourne got hit with the 28 new kids. So that's one of the things you usually learn in October as to whether it's going to be a bad year or not. And they do a nice job of increasing their overall budgets at a low percentage. And we're lucky in Wareham where with the required spending, we actually are subsidized compared to the other communities in that budget. The general government budget, and this is just the summary, is $13,167,529. Interestingly enough, that that budget, well, I'll go over that later, but that's about a $350,000 increase, I believe. So our total estimated expenses and our estimated revenues is $70,426,422. This shows you a year-over-year comparison of the FY20 budgeted versus the proposed for FY21. School and town employee benefits are going up approximately $622,457. That's with a 2% increase to the healthcare line. We did get a large assessment for the, I shouldn't say large, our increase to the Plymouth County retirement was a little bit larger this year, but it wasn't a backbreaker. So overall, that's a 4.49% increase. General government is a $82,671 increase, so 2.62%. And just so everybody knows what general government is, that is town meeting costs, the Selectmen's Department, Administration, Finance Committee, the Reserve Fund, Town Accountant, the Audit, the Assessing Department, Treasurer Collector's Department, the General Services, which is our mailings and our main copiers, Legal Services, Personnel Services, Information Technology, the whole communications the part of that as well, the Town Clerk, Elections and Registrations, Planning, Community Development, Sick Leave Bonus, and that's that. So probably the biggest part of our activities when you come from the town, not considering, obviously municipal maintenance and the police is right in that section. The Culture and Recreation, which is the library and some things like the historical Historical Commission,
are based in the under cultural recreation. They're looking at a 3.97% increase. The most of that is the library. Well, really the whole increase is the library. The foundation and some of the pledges are not fully supporting the library director anymore, or that large percentage. So we're trying to fully fund the salaries of the library, with offsetting it with about 16,000 of the library aid. And we've reduced the book budget and such for helping the foundation will step up and pick up those sections. It seems to be more of an appetite to pick up the books and the materials than it is for salary. So the school budget's going up $800,879 for a 2.72% increase.
Now, that's interesting. I gotta say something about that. 800, so out of the, basically our 2.5 formula.
Yeah.
Which is about, what, 1,050?
It's $1,050,000.
50 billion, right? 1,050,000. 880 goes to school.
Yeah, it can, about 800,000 that goes to.
So, I mean, you at least, you're certainly giving them a big chunk of money.
Yeah, I understand it started off at a 3 million and it worked down to about 1.4, but that's obviously not achievable with the revenues that we have.
No, I mean, look at the numbers. I mean, you only have, even if you add the new growth in, that's only another 400 grand. There isn't much money there.
Public safety with, between the Division of Natural Resources and the police department's only going up 2.21%. You know, with what our folks are doing with the amount of call volume, arrests, and responses, we get a heck of a return from that department and from the chief on down. They do an amazing job. So it's in the future, that's really one department as well as the Public Works, aka municipal maintenance, that we need to look into increasing the funding, adding staffing and such. It just doesn't work. So Public Works.
A revenue stream.
Yeah. Public Works is increasing, big portion of that, as well as the MS4. We've parked $20,000 worth of expenses. Also going to be seeking at the special town meeting. We're working with the Mass Maritime Academy and one of the organizations in MS4 sampling program. So I'm going to seek to put some funding aside from that for free cash, because I just don't see parking it in the budget. But one of the things is creating an MS4 line within the municipal maintenance budget to help us track all their actual expenditures, because we need to report to the EPA. You know, they ask for it, we need to do it, and get all the information out. Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services, which is Board of Health, you'll see a small reduction. Board of Health, we have one employee, one of the part-time employees, and 25% of another employee funded through the rental inspection program, and that's showing the offset. There's not a reduction of employees.
It's a pretty nice program.
Yeah, so. So you see the debt service, new school debt, then the state and county assessments, and that's a big one. We have been seeing, last year our state and county assessments went up about $600,000. This is the first time we've seen a decrease. There was a small decrease in the charter and about a $60,000 increase. I believe we can go through it later in the school choice. So. All told, and it's almost a misnomer on this, because the new school debt going up about 1.884 million, you know, right there, really offsets what our new expenses are, you know, artificially increases that. So, you know, one of the things we're always asked is, where's the money go? And this is the same thing as really as before, but we set it up over the dollar, because where does my dollar go? And this really represents, when you look at it, what we're looking at. A school in Upper Cape Cod Tech. Wait, what's that?
You're just loving that graphic, aren't you? Pie charts,
Yeah,
3D
so-
money graphics.
That's where the money goes, software.
So if you look at this, yeah, clearly given the view, it does not go into IT enough. But if you look at the dollar bill and just imagine between the school, Upper Cape Cod Tech, and then employee benefits, that's such a, we're looking at 2/3 of the bill disappearing. Public safety, the state and county assessments. This small portion is all those items that we listed off before, what gets done through the general government. Your public works right here, a small portion. The school debt is actually, is almost, about the same size as our public works department. Health and human services, debt, and sadly, culture and recreation down here, so. Yeah, it's just a cute. So.
What's that?
So it's just, that's a good representation of, I think, just some of the expenses. And again, the expenses by the percentage when it comes down to it. So it's similar, but if you want to go further with the dollar symbol, instead of percentages, you can say that's cents. 43 cents goes directly to the school. Upper Cape Cod Tech, 5 cents. Public safety is 10 cents on your dollar. And the killer on this is, if you look at it, public works is less than 4 cents of every dollar you put into the town. And that's a tough number to swallow given the size of our community. So.
It's amazing they get done what they get done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really is.
So we talked about, this is with the levy limit before. You see the increase to 2.5%. The debt exclusion, new growth, about 587,000. So you can see there's a slight reduction. This is the state aid. So between for Chapter 70 and charter school, so between the reduction of the charter school and our state aid at 72,000, we really, for our school department, for a $30 million school department, we got $23,686 from the state, net and new money. So it just doesn't work. 80,000 for the town, about $52,000 increase in local receipts, and a slight decrease in the enterprise fund. They have shed some employees, and so the health benefits no longer being paid reduces the overall assessment. So.
Everybody's done it tonight.
So this is the, if you look at this, just a historical of what we've received for aid. So from 2012 to 2021, our general government aid, you can see where it's gone up. We've done fairly well. But overall, can you see it?
No.
No.
Oh, let me just tell you, it's gorgeous.
Okay. All right, as long as you say it's good, I guess.
So, it just gives you a historical, but our new,
Rich might be able to read it.
our new aid all told is $119,072. So. And then this is the one you really can't see,
That's
but if
really
you
good.
looked at it, about, this is the one you really need to see, is in 2012, our school choice and our charter school sending was $2,045,000. We're now up over the. Geez, I can't even read it. we're now up over 3.2 million. So when we did a percentage-wise increase from, I think, 2010 to 2020, and it was something like a 1,500% increase over that time. So This is the first year you've seen the reduction, so we had the reduction in.
Have a reduction.
Yeah, so the charter went down 110,000 and the, increased and we saw a slight reduction on the school choice, so. So this shows you our net aid over the time, and it is still just trending down. This is our first little peak in a long time, so, really.
Look at that thing, falling like a rock.
So, yeah, if this was a stock, you'd sell it, so.
Is that adjusted for inflation?
No, this is just our pure, yeah.
Like a straight downward line.
Don't adjust it for inflation, my God, it'll just go right into the toilet.
These are the assessments, so conversely, you would love this stock. But yeah, this is, you can see that is our first true, flat to downtrend all told. So from 2,045,000 to 5,032,000. So it's been difficult to, that's been one of the changes. And I understand with the school choice and such, it's just, it's kind of a give and the take, but, and the problem for the schools as well is some of the kids leaving, you can't necessarily say everyone's leaving from this grade so you can reduce a teacher or anything like that. So it can be difficult. Upper Cape Cod Tech has been fairly, we've seen some big increases over the time, but their trend has been, we've been able to absorb it. This is the one that we've been going over, and Jim, yeah, I do have the, if you see the different districts in there too. So we start off with Wareham's average single-family tax bill. So without the districts in there, we're at $3,216, which I believe is the 16th lowest in the Commonwealth. You add the Wareham Fire District tax, which is slightly lower than the onset, you're at $3,844. With the onset district tax, you go right over, a little bit over $4,000. So then we started comparing some of the other communities, Falmouth, Bourne, Lakeville, Middleborough, Rochester, Carver, Plymouth, Sandwich, Mattapoisett. I didn't put Marion in there because Marion would have been over here. I think they're over 7,000 now. And
Mattapoisett's way up there too.
yeah, Mattapoisett is. So people will often talk about the tax rate. The tax rate's one component of it. It's the tax rate and then the assessed value, and that's what gives you your tax bill. So you're really, the best way to look at it is your average single-family tax bill, because if you look in Chatham, oh my God, they're at $5. It's fantastic. Why don't you move there? Well, their average single-family assessed value is $1 million. So that's that's what you're looking at. So what this is telling us is that our average single family tax rate is low. Tax rate is low or could be comparable to some of the others. However, our assessed values are really low compared to some of our neighboring communities. So why does it matter? This is the one that I put together. So I take the average single-family tax bill from another community. I use the onset one with us, which is the highest, and then you just simply, subtract. And it gives you, so Bourne, it's about a $927 difference. Carver, a little over $2,000. Falmouth, 666, that's cute. 1,082 for Lakeville, so forth and so on. We have 9,426 parcels. This is pure representation. We're not taking into our industrial land or anything. But what happens if we had that additional money, that additional $927,000 per tax bill, roughly? So we would have, if we had the same as Bourne, we'd have about $7.75 million extra. Carver, 14.7. Falmouth, 7.2. Lakeville, 9.7. Mattapoisett, $25 million. Middleborough, 9.3. Plymouth, 18.6. Rochester, 14.4 million. So when people tell me we don't give a lot of services, I tend to agree. I think we give a lot of services for what we have availability, but we are not the same as some of the surrounding communities. And there's a reason why. The money they get from the average single-family home is much more. And so they're able to provide more services back. It's an in and an out. So really, it's up to it's at the end of the day, it's the residents and the voters that decide on really what the service level is. And I understand they just gave there's a lot of people that can't pay more. And that's one of the best things about this community, where you can be in a waterfront community and still have relative affordability. I know it probably doesn't seem that way to somebody on fixed income or such, or that's had a family home for 40 years and seen the taxes, but compared to the other communities, it's a bargain. So, purple.
Is that it?
Well, that's really the main jux of it. We've got the rest of it is breakdown from departments. Thursday's the all-day public hearing with the finance committee starting at 8:30 in the morning. So,
I just want to make a comment. I was in Boston today, and we were discussing a bunch of different things, and it was interesting that Chapter 70 came up. I think there's 170 communities were funded at the minimum out of the 351. Person sitting next to me was from Milton. They only got a $1 million increase in funding for the schools. And yet, and Milton is not a poor community. What was really surprising, the information Derek pulled out, if you delve down farther into it, there's a DESI report. It shows Wareham is 24% above minimum school spending.
Really?
Actually, yeah. It surprised me because I always thought we were close. We're 24% above the minimum. And yet, the people who are already at minimum we're going to stay with the minimum, which is basically $30 a student. Okay, we're above it. We didn't get anything for it, really. And at the same time, if you have low-income population, and we have 50% of our kids on the food programs, so we should qualify, we lose out on both. We didn't get either one. That's why we're so far off. It's crazy.
and there's an interesting yin and a yang in that people will say, well, what about those what about those waterfront homes? You get a lot of taxes out of those, or some of those big ones you see out there. And besides the fact that we've got probably 1,000 valued under $100,000, according to the Frank Mahades report, I say one of the, there's something called EQV, which is how they determine our aid. Part of it is our residents' ability to pay. We have a favorable residents' ability to pay in that it's low, so the state's willing to give you more money. However, they consider us land rich. So when they say you've got, your valuation, you've got for some of these properties, or your overall valuation is high, they then reduce your aid. So those wealthy properties that bring in taxes then offset the state aid we get. So they're I don't know the actual calculation, but they're either a net neutral or could be a loss or just a little gain. They're not a big windfall. So,
all right.
How does the protected open space how can the protected open space affect the value of the land? Does that count to being land rich because of the more open space that we have, or is it taken out of the equation?
yeah, no, that wouldn't be.
Properties that are
I'm
off
just
the tax
asking.
roll.
Yeah, no, that's as much as I'm the development person, I can't claim that they hurt us.
So it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like net zero.
Yeah, they do. they shift a burden onto the taxpayers a little bit.
they
'Cause
do.
you take that, basically that gets reduced out of the levy, so whatever that reduction is,
That
the
I
other tax.
understand, but it
yeah.
doesn't impact us as far as the state looking at us being land rich.
You know, Jim, I truly don't believe so, but I don't have the 100%, yeah, so,
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah.
all right, we gotta move because we're running out of time. So, anything else?
Some good news. Met with the COA director, Missy, and COA board with the, there was a retirement of a 10-year employee out of the COA. We appreciated Mrs. Dudley's time, what she's given to the seniors in this community. Really nice job. It does afford us an opportunity now to go with a full-time director. So we've put out for a full-time director. There's been some initial interviews, and I'm going to hear when the second interviews are. COA board will be in there. Maybe we'll invite a selectman and Mr. Chairman, whoever you want on there, see if there's availability.
Okay.
And I think that's really going to be transformative for the COA to get them going to the next level. So.
All right. Okay, we're gonna move on because we gotta hustle. We only have 15 minutes, 16 minutes to get this done. All right, everybody ready? We're gonna do announcements now, quickly. Alan?
Okay. Historical Society has a program by Linda Ames, a tribute to Black History Month with Wareham History. Monday, February 17th, Methodist Meeting House, 495 Main Street, Wareham, Mass. Admission is free to members, non-members $2.
Okay, is that it?
That's it
Jim?
for just announcements.
Any announcements? Peter?
Announcements.
Mary? Okay, next up, citizens' comments. Is anybody here to speak to us tonight? I don't see anybody. Board comments. Alan?
I'll try and do this as quick as I can. Unfortunately, it's been a very busy week. Basically, on this, there's different House and Senate bills coming forward. I think what's important to us right now, I spoke on House Bill 4398 today. It's an act relative to host community agreements. I had talked to Derek before. I also talked to Mayor Markowitz from Northampton, and also the town manager from Brookline, Mel Kuchner. We're really concerned about this particular act. It's going to have some effect with the host agreements, and there's some questions what they can do legally or not, but it looks like the Cannabis Control Commission will get more control than they should have. So what I asked the Mass Municipal Association to consider, because they're against this act, which is good for us anyways, but we get 3% for the retail. We also get 3% for impact fees. We have to provide now reports about our impact fees, costs, and everything else. But what I want to do, and what they've kind of said they will consider, is to lobby the state to remove the host 3% and just go to a 6% total. Therefore, what will happen is that the industry, which is lobbying to try and get rid of these host agreement fees overall, just have a straight 6%. It protects us long-term that way. Because as it is on this bill anyways, it says after 5 years, the host agreement fee goes away, period. So,
There's not gonna be any price reduction, if they get a break on it.
of course not. So I'm working on that.
You can count on that.
There's a few things there, and I'm not going to go all, there's too much stuff today, but there's a possibility of a bill for vocational schools. There's issues about how admissions are done, and they're concerned about it, so there may be what they call a voluntary, policy as far as, basically be like a lottery instead of, screening through people. I talked to Mr. Dutch, who's retiring, and he said they turn away over 200 Wareham students a year.
Really?
So if for some reason we hit if they do a lottery and we hit the wrong part of it, it can be really expensive.
Is it competitive?
They have their own way of doing it. A lottery system would mean you put all the names in a hat and hope they come.
Yeah, there's certain segments you have to hit, like attendance, things like that, and not have had any.
And then you go into the lottery.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, let me go through these quickly because everybody wants to go home. The MMA is going to revisit the policies that they have as concerns county government, which will probably help us when we deal with the county if we get this done. I got appointed today to the Local Government Advisory Commission for another year. On the COA with the H-friendly communities that we're working on, because Missy was temporarily there. I'm hoping that we hire a new director shortly, and that person there will start to actually finish up the program and get us into that program itself. The survey, everything is ready to go, but I feel as though we should have the actual new director, head manning this and not have someone else pick up what someone else did work-wise. It should be hers. Jack Sylvia was before us last week about the busing. I called GATRA the next day. They actually know about the 4 men that they were talking about. And I thought that basically you could get, the GATRA call, and that's the case. They dropped them off, but the operator for that particular portion will not go down Indian Neck Road into the facility and pick them up, etc. But the ride call will do that. So I'm not sure where the breakoff was, a misunderstanding, or whatever else.
So they're gonna have to use ride call.
Yeah, but it's.
Or just deal with waiting down. They wait right at the island of,
Yeah, it's
Indian
that
Neck
little,
Road and,
that little neck, they drop them off there. It's kind of dangerous if they drop them there and one guy's in a wheelchair going down Indian Neck Road.
Right.
There's no sidewalks.
Yeah.
But they can get dial-a-ride. And matter of fact, the gentleman in the wheelchair uses dial-a-ride.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, they know exactly who it was and everything. So just so Jack, if he's listening up there, knows we did go into it and take care of it.
All right.
As I mentioned before, we have on the Route 28 into Tohono Road. I'm not going to read all of it, but basically that particular intersection qualifies for a traffic study, for an actual traffic light. The question is who pays for it. Derek obviously doesn't want to pay for it. Since the request originally came from the fire department, I was making a suggestion maybe they'd like to pay for it, which should go over really well. But the other part is
Their response time might be a little slow to your house now, Alan.
I don't care. I have insurance. I'll be glad to collect. If you'd like to start it, I can finish it. And the other piece of this is that we need to look and see if for some reason possibly we had in the development in that area any agreements with the planning board for, lights to be put in when the traffic hit a certain number and stuff for either developments down to Tohono Road, Farm to Market, possibly Rosebrook, et cetera, because we did have an agreement.
That didn't happen.
We did have an agreement, I believe, on Charge Pond Road, not Charge Pond, Charlotte Furnace Road. When it hits a certain traffic point, we were supposed to put a traffic light there. I remember that from the planning board years ago.
who's supposed to
Well,
put it in?
we might be able to, but you can't put that on a developer.
We need to see if there's anything there for
You can't all of a
us.
sudden tell this one developer, well, okay, we let everybody else skate, but you're the lucky, you drew the short straw.
No, what I'm saying is there may have been,
Yay!
there may have been in the conditions, Patrick, that when something happened to a certain point, they'd be responsible.
Short straw.
Either way.
What else?
Destination Plymouth, Ken and I are meeting with them on February 20th, and I'm going to ask that either on March 3rd or March 10th, we have put on the agenda for them to come talk to us as well. They asked to come here.
Okay.
Okay. University of Mass Blue Economy, which has to do with what we call them the Marine Technology Corridor, which we're part of. UMass had a meeting, and basically they were given a $5 million grant. Representative Keating was there to announce it. This is the largest grant that University of Mass Dartmouth has ever got. So we're involved with that as well. What else have I got for you today? I have more, but everybody wants to go home.
All right. You got anything there, James?
I'm gonna
No?
just say no
Peter?
right now.
Mary? No? Okay. Liaison reports. Back to you, Alan.
Yeah, you got it.
You're all set?
I'm done.
All right. Consent agenda. We have approval of minutes for December 17th and January 28th.
I move that we approve both sets of minutes.
Are we both all there?
Better be.
Nope,
That's a loaded question.
sorry, okay. I move that we approve the meeting minutes from January 28th, and we were all here.
All right, motion made by Mary, seconded by
Me.
Alan. I saw his hand first. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, abstained, unanimous. All right, so who was missing on the next one?
All right, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from December 17th, and Alan was not here.
Not there.
Okay, motion made by Mary, seconded by Peter. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. It's 4-0-1. All right, and that leaves us only one thing, and we made it before 10 o'clock,
Motion to
which of
adjourn.
course is the witching hour. All right, so next week, we definitely have a dog hearing. I want everybody to know, I believe it's next week. And hopefully the meeting won't last this long next week. But thank you, Wareham. Have a great week. He already made it. All in favor? Aye, yep, it was done.